Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining in. I see a lot of folks, few folks have tuned in, and thank you for taking the time today to join our webinar, our chat with Rhys. I'll just maybe wait for 30 seconds and then we can get started for the session that we have today. We're going to talk about quite a lot of interesting topics around emergency response with docs, around drones or docs for DFR. We are also going to talk about how Rhys has done his deployments in Asheville particularly, and also how he's expanding his operations across. So we'll just give it 10 more seconds and then we can get started. I see quite a lot of folks have tuned in. So maybe by the time the next 20 seconds, I can just lay some ground rules. There's a chat section on the right hand side of your screen. You can use the chat section and the Q&A section to ask your questions or discuss specific ideas that you may have throughout the session, and we'd love to take more questions. So we're going to keep it conversational. We're going to keep it interactive. We don't particularly have a bunch of slides that we want to cover. We are going to hear Rhys's thoughts on the actual deployment and get into the nitty-gritty of how Rhys went about adopting docs for particular use cases. So having said that, I see, quite a lot of folks have tuned in. So for those of you who've tuned in, good morning. Thank you for joining in. We'll just get started right now. So yeah, welcome to another webinar, guys. Today's topic hits right at the heart of why we're all passionate about drone autonomy, using technology to save lives and protect communities. When natural disasters strike, every minute counts. The faster we can assess damage, the quicker we can deploy resources where they need it the most. But what if we could have eyes in the sky, ready to launch at a moment's notice, providing real-time data to emergency responders? That's exactly what's happening in Asheville as we speak, and we have the perfect person to tell us all about it. Right? Before I get into Reese's introduction, I am Kaushal Kulkarni and I'll be your host for the next 30 minutes as we dive into groundbreaking case study of rapid damage assessments using drone docs in the next 30 to 35 minutes. Our speaker today is pioneering this approach, transforming how cities respond to disasters through autonomous drone networks. Let me introduce Rhys Andersen, founder and CEO of Ovrwatch. Rhys has been revolutionizing emergency response through autonomous drone operations, most notably during Hurricane Helene in North Carolina. His team's work in Asheville has set new benchmarks for using drone dogs in disaster assessment, showcasing how autonomous UAVs can enhance emergency response while improving safety and efficiency. Right. So, thank you so much for joining and tuning in, Reese, and for everyone who's joined in. Welcome to the session. Um, yeah, Reese, it's been great to see firsthand how you've been deploying these docs at tremendous pace. So maybe before you get into the nitty gritty, would you want to explain what really got you, what gravitated you towards these docs, and how did you get introduced to these docs?
Yeah, no, thanks for the intro. Yeah, I kind of come from a long history of doing work with insurance claims. So I'd been in the contracting world and we'd done a lot with drones for a long time. So, this is something that as we kind of saw all this stuff going on, we realized that this is right up our alley as far as what we like to do, what we like to be involved with. And, with the docs, the second those came out, obviously there's a lot of ideas and stuff that go through your head and things that you're like, man, this would be so cool if we could do this or if we could do that. And when we kind of when there's a lot of I'd say like need for help over in the Asheville area, we were just kind of at a particular point where we're like, hey, we kind of want to showcase what we're capable of and put some of the ideas that we have to use over there in Asheville. So I think as we've gone through the claim process, I've been through hurricanes before, and we've gone and done disaster stuff and multiple different types of disasters. And so, there's a lot of different experts in that field and a lot of different aspects to it. So I think for me, one of the biggest things that we prioritize with Ovrwatch, what I really have preached this whole entire time is just if you have the data and you have the information to back things up, then it makes life a lot easier during the whole rebuild process and sharing information with people. And we do have the technology at this point to take a lot of that information on a more granular level and provide it on a regular basis. So it was really cool to be able to kind of just go, all right, well, let's just contact them and say, hey, this is what we're looking at doing. And that's kind of how it all got started. Is we just said, hey, let's give them a shout, see what if they're willing to talk to us or whatever. So I think just with my history and understanding of claims, understanding the disaster side, at least on that side of things, and the construction side and all the things that go into doing that, it helped out a lot. And I think it helps us to kind of position these docks and the situation to where we need to be to get the most out of it, So that's a little bit about, where I came from, at least, so.
Awesome. So yeah, you had the right background for, say, being at the right place at the right time with the docs to understand, how they could be assets for data collection and then eventually reconstruction. So could you probably share, and I touched upon it, how, Hurricane Helene was one of those, say, moments where the doc truly hit its true potential. Could you probably walk us through that use case a little bit in detail as to, were you already set up when the hurricane had hit, or was it after the fact that you came in, and how did the doc, help in that particular setup?
Yeah. So I don't think there's anybody that has anything set up docs wise. There might be docs here and there that are set up, but I mean, to say, hey, that something's set up to handle a disaster like that. I mean, that's kind of what's cool about this. The way that the world is, the way this is all going, is that we can do things like this and actually accomplish getting it done. Obviously, I would have loved to have just been completely set up prior to the disaster. But even with that, there comes a lot of different challenges where with that, you lose power, and you have to have you would have to have backup power already set up and planned on, and there's a lot of pushback with that with any city. Why would you need to add all these expenses just to have a backup in the event that there's a hurricane that affects Asheville that never has happened before? I mean, it's really, really difficult to be already set up. And so we had no relationship with the city of Asheville, and I'll talk about what they had going on here in a second. But ideally, what we would really like to do is be able to have this in a place or in a location or in specific locations that are more prone to this, or at the minimum, be able to take something like what we've done and have it ready to go to where the second something goes down, we're there and we're ready to go. So that's what we're doing. That's what we're, working towards. But the cool thing about Asheville is they had a really good knowledge of drones. They already had a whole program that's set up. They had a bunch of different pilots, and you never really know what you're going to get when you call and start talking to people. And sometimes different departments are a little less than enthused to talk to people because they just talk to so many different people about it. And I think the one big thing that happened here is that although it was a little bit after the fact, and everybody would love to have gotten set up beforehand, or even 2 days after the storm or something, there are a lot of difficulties with doing that. So Captain Moore, who might join the call a little bit, but he already had this all set up. He had a whole situation where he had pilots, he had different drone operators. He'd already even filed waivers for beyond visual line of sight. So he had a drone dock. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, they had already had the dock one, and they were gifted during this storm a couple other docks to kind of, one to use in a mobile situation, and another one that they placed at a couple different locations, I think. So you had your dock one and a couple dock twos. And so when we called him, he's like, yeah, I know about docks. And I was like, you do? This is awesome. It sounds simple what I'm saying, but it's actually, they had a whole just story that we have some other stuff that'll come out here soon about what they did with their drones and how they were using them. And so, they're very well versed on that. And I think like the snag that they hit is just that it costs a lot of money to get something like this done and at a widespread use. So you're talking like a network of docks or multiple docks. The docks that they had, I'm not exactly sure on all of this, but I know at least one of them or two of them were gifted to them in order to help with the hurricane effort. So, you can have all this stuff set up, but I mean, it still isn't going to cover the entire damage area or their whole city limits or, whatever that is. They were kind of at a spot where they were primed to talk to us basically. And it was a really great union where I could say, man, this is like awesome to talk to this guy who actually knows this stuff. And, we both had a lot of the same ideas and probably the same thoughts about just, what we can accomplish if we were able to put all this in place. And so, yeah, I mean, it's been really cool to work with Asheville's police department and, Captain Moore and all those guys, just because you can talk to them. They understand how much it's important. I mean, they saved lives with drones. There was a lot of different drone operators that came in to help during that. So, I mean, I'm not over here trying to say we have we've cornered the market in of the only people that responded in Asheville. There's a whole lot of different things that happened and a lot of amazing stuff. So I think that their ability to adapt and be able to say, okay, yeah, let's get this going, and how do we offset costs and how do we work with other people in the area? What can we actually accomplish with this? I mean, we started with a certain amount of docks and then we came back and added more and came back and added more. So, we kind of came up with, all right, well, this is somewhat feasible. Let's see what we can do. And I don't think he actually believed we would show up and do what we were talking about doing. And it's kind of a joke with them that we have, but it's just when we came out there, we just said, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to test this out because it's a really good use case for us for testing for FlytBase. Obviously, it was a great opportunity to see what we can accomplish and how we can coordinate all that, and then we're able to say, all right, we're actually making a difference out here, and the police force can actually take this and use it on a regular basis, and there's obviously more stuff that happens beyond that. So. So yeah, I think the goal there for us was to say, all right, what can we accomplish? What are limitations with the docks? What other products are in place to help us accomplish this? What about the waivers, all that stuff? So we had to kind of assess that, and then once we did, we said, all right, let's go put out the first few, and got that done, and then kind of migrated from there. So yeah, it's kind of how it all got started. And I think the biggest key is that, like, if the whole city didn't necessarily have an understanding, but Captain Moore's been somebody who's been very good about, hey, if it's technology and it works and it's going to help save lives, we need to at least take a look at it, see what we can accomplish with it, and consider costs, of course, but consider what the need of it is. That's gonna, and how that's gonna change what's happened there and stuff. So I think, if other people looking at this, that was one of the biggest things, is just having somebody who is a little more open, a little more, willing to talk and discuss and figure out what we could possibly accomplish. And then I think combined with our approach, the way we did it, with combining third party or local businesses to help out and to provide us access and stuff like that, I think it really just made it that's what made it possible to do it. So, but yeah, essentially, right. Just to give the overall audience an update, we have, I think, 13 docks that are in Asheville currently, and adding more because there's people who are getting awareness about it and wanting to add more. But the goal and what we've accomplished is to cover that entire damaged area that's within their city limits. Give assistance to those who are doing the cleanup, and of course other stuff that we'll talk about on this. So it was pretty awesome to get started with it.
Yeah, maybe just to show the audience a few glimpses of and you can maybe talk over this. This is an overview of the deployment.
Yeah. So what's cool about
what's
cool about Asheville is they have a river that goes through the entire city. So it wasn't as easy as hey, this one this beach got damaged. It's this one specific area. It honestly went through the whole city of Asheville, and that's what I think. It's really hard. People don't realize how like you see stuff on the news and all that, but I mean, I've been in a lot of disaster zones, and a lot of times it's concentrated in one area, and this was really just across the entire city. Anywhere there where there was river, you had damage and devastation. You also had all the wind damage that came through at the same time. So there was trees everywhere, and that's essentially what we had to do is we had to place these docks in locations that covered, what we needed to cover. So you can see on the picture that's the next picture there, we had to create a plan for, the different partnerships that we work with, and say, okay, well, hey, we're going to stick this out here, and this is what we're going to accomplish here. We can provide you with services as well, help you out, and make sure that you guys get what you need. But, essentially, we're going to have the police that gets access to this, and then we're going to do damage assessment as we go along. So with some of the key partnerships that we were able to work with, we were able to stick these on these locations. It's a little bit more safe. It's not like we have to go get a trailer and stick it out in an area. That even buildings that had been completely like their entire first floor and a half have to get completely redone. Like this is one of them. The owner of this particular location was, like, hey, if I can help you guys out, and this is kind of dead center of one of the major areas that was damaged, and it was on national news and all that. But he said, hey, if we can help you out and we can get this to a point where you guys can lift off from here and to get what you guys need done. I mean, you can see it everything is kind of operating normal in a lot of the other areas, but what all around that entire area, as you pan to the left here, you can see there's so much damage. So it's an operating city around all of this devastation in the entire, area. So,
Right. And
actually,
I had a question around,
yeah.
what was the strategy behind placements of these docks across the city? And how was it strategic? Was it based on, say, the damage that was done during the hurricane, or was it more of a post-facto decision of covering the city for emergency response?
I'd say it's both. It's for the damage and reviewing all the damage, but I'd say it's more for as this damage has happened, we can't really do too much about what the actual damage. I guess like it's not about as much. I think I'm trying to say we were like a couple months after the fact, so it's not even that it was an immediate emergency need and saving lives at that very moment. It was more like we set up the network to help during the rebuild process throughout the entire time, and it's still like, again, it's definitely helped out, and they had a lot of different drones that they used to save lives and all that. And that's essentially now from this point forward, they're able to use the network to do what they need to do for emergency response and everything, to get what they need, out of these docks in every single location. So, but yeah.
Right.
And if you want to go to, go ahead.
Yeah. Please go ahead. Tell me.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, this is like a 3D model of what the damage looks like. But if you go up on a couple, it'll show you some of the. I know everybody's probably like, oh, I've seen the damage, but we've got a couple of cool videos that I can talk through some of the stuff as you watch it. But let's see here. Yeah, so I mean, like what essentially happened is there's even a lot of there was bridges that were down. They cut off access from crossing over in certain locations. So you can see it's just it flooded so bad there that it eroded almost everything and destroyed everything. So what we did is, I don't know if it's glitchy on your end as well too, but I got it's pretty glitchy on my end.
I think it's on the platform because it's pretty smooth on my end.
Okay, gotcha. It must be my internet too. So, but yeah, so we've got a few different videos where we kind of flew some of the damage, and this just gives you an idea. I mean, it's when you drive through it, it's just a whole different experience to kind of see. It's yes, there's damage and devastation. I've been in tornadoes and windstorms and hurricanes and stuff, but this whole river area, every single business that was around there basically had everything that existed inside, all the contents, everything that the entire structure. And there's U-Hauls that are sitting in the river, and there's every manufacturing companies that had whatever product that they have is just completely spread across the entire river for miles and miles and miles. So you're looking at like a city golf course that, looked decent at one point now. And they've had to basically take our docks now and like take a look at what they need to clean up. They've gone and started the cleanup process. But then again, with these docks and drones in place, we're able to help manage what it looks like now versus what it looked like prior to. So I think just when you drive through, and this is where one of the next clips, once you get past this one, it's a clip of flying through some of the damage, and it's just like the amount of, like, even after they clean up and they use their bulldozers and they take everything down, it really is not it's unfortunate because there's so many trees like that are just don't exist on the bank anymore. It's everything's been pretty much, it's not even done yet, but they've had to just wipe a lot of that clean because there's no way to clean everything unless you just take it all out. So everything that's there in that building is now in the river, and it's all stuck in all the trees, every bit of the water, the mud, and everything. And it's just like nonstop like this the whole entire way. So, in order to figure out, this is miles and miles, and you have trailers in there. I was going to have, if the captain joins on, that's great. He can talk about some of this, but I think that there's over 900 vehicles that were in the river. And, how do you manage getting those out? You can talk to people who are doing the cleanup process and stuff, but somebody from the city has to coordinate, where all those are at, and give that information back. You can go and rely on people going out over and over, but it just doesn't make any sense. And so by having the drone imagery and mapping and all that, we can take everything that is in this river and then run these maps again over and over and say, all right, well, here's what's left to do, and here's where we need to focus on. It's even when you do the first initial cleanup, it's not still fully cleaned. You have to go back over and over again to kind of make sure you're collecting they collect the bulk, and then they go back and do another clean to just, make sure that they pick up the rest of the remnants and stuff. So until you actually map it all out, there's no way to know. We just passed a car right there. There's a bridge here that you're going to go under. And, I think that was the biggest thing that I think that they not struggled with, but just needed a lot of help on, is collecting all this information and understanding where else is at, so they can share with their key stakeholders to understand, if they're inside if they're in the city and they're trying to answer to somebody about what all is happening and how things are going, they need to be able to take this data and this information and share it with them. So this has been super helpful. We can do a lot of these same maps over and over again to just get the change over time. And that's some of the slides that, we've got here to talk about or whatever. So, but yeah.
Yeah, and that sort of brings me to one of my questions, Rhys, is how did the docks how were they set up operationally? How often were you flying? And what kind of features of the dock really stood as a differentiator in this entire process? So how were you set up operationally, and how did the dock help?
Actually, like this particular image here, it's not, again, nobody needed it to be absolutely perfect quality 3D model with, amazing texture and everything. We really just needed to know what things look like and where things are at. So, being able to do even just a waypoint mission with an interval setting, we would just set the waypoints along the entire river. So it seems like traditionally people like to do, their lawnmower pattern. They set up an area mapping mission, and with this particular side of things, there's miles of river to do. So any one dock could probably handle 3 to 4 miles, because it's set somewhere near the river, and then it can go 2 miles in both directions. So we use an overlap where we can make sure that we have double coverage and stuff in places. But by doing even just an interval setting, we can get an idea of what the river looks like, and then run that same waypoint mission over and over again. And personally, I actually really like the waypoint missions on FlytBase, and there's a lot of details. So there's a lot of settings that you can mess with and make adjustments to, and it's made it a lot easier just to go, all right, well, let's map this whole thing and make sure we get eyes on the entire area. And I don't know if there was some other slides, but there's a video, and I'm not sure if you have that video in there, but I can maybe even screen share or something if you want to. But you want me to do that?
Is that, yeah, sure, why not? I think that's all I had from when it came to the content. But yeah, sorry, you were talking about how the waypoint missions helped.
Yeah, and I think there's so let's see here. This is one of them where, it's just a quick clip that shows you, hey, this is where all the damage is at in this particular river section. And again, I don't know if it's showing. I think I'm just screen sharing. So we're able to see this with the actual drone flight, and then as we go with the docs, we map the whole thing, and this is what it ends up turning out like, and then we can map this again. So this is just an animation that kind of shows, like, once you get all this done using the waypoint missions. This was just a waypoint mission that basically went down and back to make sure that we can handle everything that we needed to handle, or at least like get eyes on site, and then again, we could just do that same mission over and over again. So it's that part's been pretty cool. I think that it's just been a really good thing that's in place with the docs, to just, no matter what, at any part, there's we can reach or access any location that they needed to get some additional information. So when you had Army Corps and the cleanup crew that came out there and they're asking for, hey, how can we get some imagery on what the current status is, they can talk to their guys and ask them, and they can maybe fly their own drones and stuff, but they know that we already have a system in place that we can just get the imagery and then send it all over to them. So sharing the information has been awesome, to be able to just get people what they need. With that, there's been, in this whole area, there's been theft, and I mean, I was helping with setting up a dock with my team, and just it's a guy in the field that's like the next door over, and we're like, there's a security guy with us, and he's like, hey buddy, what are you doing? And the guy's taking copper off of somebody's property, and of course he's like, oh yeah, we're I didn't realize it was against the law. I thought once it's damaged, it's free to anybody. He's just lying through his teeth. But like, people are stealing stuff left and right there, and that's what's been kind of cool, is it's not just the mapping side of things. If you use what happens right now, this is actually what we do. They have a go-to location, with FlytBase, and so anytime that we've actually integrated this with all the 911 calls. So anytime that they get a call that's a 911 call, they now integrate that to where they send that drone out immediately to that location. So they have eyes on site. We've had some interesting situations that have been recorded and given that information to where they needed to go. And we've basically empowered Asheville Police Department in that regard, that we could say they already did this. Again, they had a Jock 1 that they did this with that has an LTE module, and they were using this, but there's a certain limitation to it. With this now, what they do is they just go to whatever dock is the closest to that particular area, and then they go into FlytBase, and they go to location. So these guys don't need to be that well versed in FlytBase necessarily. They know what they need to do, and they know how to fly, and they go to location, they hit record, and they get what they need to out of that. So they actually have a command center that's set up. It's a room that's got a number of different screens, and these guys are flying in there anytime that something happens, there's an emergency. So even at night, we've done some scans at night to just make sure there's not people in the area. And as time has gone on, it's the problems and the things that are they shift a little bit as the weather changes. There's more homeless that stay in those areas, and so you need to kind of monitor that stuff. So it's just, there's a lot of things with the disaster side that you don't really think about too much until you realize you have to deal with it. And then having that visibility, or that ability to just say, go there immediately, is just such a big thing for them. So do you have a question?
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point now, Rhys, which is once the damage assessment is done, you have the reporting in place, you've helped with the emergency response to the particular hurricane, and now these docs are still there, and they're integrated with the 911 systems for their daily operation. So that brings me to my question, which is, how can other cities adopt this strategy? Is it that they have to now, wait for an emergency? I don't think so. There are a lot of proactive measures that they can take, that customers can take now, cities can take to integrate with their existing computer-aided dispatch systems, 911 systems for emergency response. So, what would your, I would say, top advice to such cities be when it comes to implementing these systems?
Yeah. I think first off, that like Asheville has been pretty cool. They're very easy to talk to, and they if somebody was asking or looking, I mean, the first thing to do is go to people that have had to deal with things and talk to them about what works, what doesn't work, because cities waste so much time and money and meetings and all kinds of stuff on trying to find the right solution and trying to find what works. And there are solutions out there that work for some that don't work for others. And I think that there's a lot of different options out there that are potentially good options. So I'm not trying to be super vague, but I mean, if you know that somebody had some success with something, then go and talk to those people. And Asheville has multiple entities or organizations, cities that'll come in, other police departments that'll come in and talk to them. They've had senators and they've had congressmen and stuff that have come in and asked, what they're doing. Even I think what they did well that the other cities and other people need to consider is that you have to kind of raise the awareness and you have to get people on board. So you can have a great idea, but there's always going to be two sides. There's always going to be people who don't agree. There's always going to be decisions that need to be made. And so by getting the wins, so if you're able to go and say, hey, look, this is what happened over in Asheville, and this is like what they were able to do, and this is the type of program that they have, this is how they built it, this is their command center, this is if you're able to kind of go and emulate or show what Asheville is able to accomplish, then it's not necessarily that you have to go to Asheville, but at least just find a way to start raising the awareness. And then of course Asheville, the biggest thing with them is that they were able to get some wins that kind of during the hurricane they were able to save people, find people. They were able to do a lot with the drones to a point where there really wasn't anybody that could say, hey, this doesn't at least make sense, regardless of what side of politics or anything. Like it makes sense that if you can't access an area, you have a drone that can. It would be better to get visibility than to not for some reason. So if you're able to show those kind of wins, it removes a lot of the red tape, a lot of the barriers that exist for starting up new programs and asking for funding and all of that. And I think number one, raising your awareness and getting people to start to understand what it's really all about and how many options there are, and really educating yourself about all that. Talking to people who've actually had successes, and of course getting your own wins. It doesn't have to be that you're implementing a full entire dock strategy immediately. You can still get wins with your drone program, and you can maybe start with one dock. And I know a number of different departments that are using one dock or two docks to kind of just get started and see what's going on, and then they know where they can go and expand from there. So it's I think that's probably my biggest thing is just there's going to be a lot of pushback with a lot of that stuff, and it's important to really start now and go to people who've
Right.
had success.
Yeah, that's quite insightful. I mean, just to summarize, figure out exactly what works for the departments of different cities, because it's very different for everyone. Everyone has different challenges. Raising the awareness with case studies, with use cases that probably, say Asheville has successfully deployed a program. And then, of course, one important point that I very well agree with is start small. Start with one or two docs, and then have that implemented end to end, and then see that scale out. At FlytBase as well, we believe in wave theory, which is these deployments are happening in waves. The first wave is a 1 to 2 dock deployment, and that requires quite a lot of change, quite a lot of effort, especially around waivers, around identifying the use cases. But once you've done that, and once these 2 docs are successful, you can easily move on to the next wave, and then the next wave of deployments. And I think with your particular deployment in Asheville, it's a testament to the same wave theory. You started off with 2 to 3 docs. It helped during the hurricane phase, and then eventually branching out to multiple sites, integrating with
Yeah.
911 systems. I think the same, if not the same playbook, but a similar playbook in
Yeah.
terms of
No, I mean, we started with like I think it was four to five docks or something like that in the very beginning, and then we added more and added more. So it was, once you start with the few, you start to realize, man, this is so awesome and it's so helpful. Why are we not doing this all over? But we couldn't just immediately, like, it was a short period of time it took us to do that, but it was definitely a couple wave of actions. And I think the other thing I'd say for other people that are looking at doing this is that there are plenty of ways to get this done without just going to getting funding. And there are a lot of different relationships that you can build that might also be interested in having these types of services or having a joint relationship with you. And so that's what we found a lot with, and that's what I came to Asheville about. I was like, hey, I think we could get this done, but it has to be done this particular way, which is that we work with the local businesses and we work with other people who are interested in supporting, number one, but potentially even donating or helping the city recover. And if those people are actually care and they actually are interested in that, then the cost of this is relatively minimal for what we're accomplishing and what we're trying to get out of it. So we were able to basically remove a lot of the cost burden to Asheville Police Department. I mean, a huge amount of burden, just because what we did was go to other routes to make sure that people worked in coordination with us. And I think that with other cities, there's so many different entities and organizations that exist that might actually enjoy having something like this, and maybe would be willing to sponsor something to get somebody on board. I mean, and if you start with one, I'm sure there's somebody in your city or your town that would be willing to help bridge that gap. And then when you get those wins, that's when you go back and you say, all right, hey, this has worked. Let's get this moving forward and continue and push it. So I just kind of wanted to clarify, because I feel like that's the biggest thing for us that really made a huge difference is those relationships. And I wish I could name them and say how awesome they are and how helpful they've been and stuff, because it really has just been perfect. The second you say, hey, we want to help out this whole area and we'd like to cover with a dock, and this is security for you and helping the entire area, almost every single one of them are like, absolutely, let's do this. So by being creative and coming up with, if you're really passionate about this and you really feel like this is helpful and can make a difference and you can start a program, you can find the ways to get it done. So
Right. Thank you for that breakdown. And I fully agree. It's something that we're seeing around different geographies as FlytBase as well, is building those relationships and then working towards the first 2 dock deployments, 3, 4 dock deployments, making that successful and then moving on to the next wave. We have a question from Mitchell Baldwin, and the question I'll just read out for you, Rhys, is was any elevation data gathered during the process? I think it's in context with the Asheville deployment during the emergency response.
yeah.
So was any elevation data gathered during this process? Curious if topographic data was needed during the cleanup process.
Yeah, so actually we did a couple different, there are maps that can be done that are a little less accurate, just because you can do different types of waypoints and missions and different types of flights. But yeah, actually we were working with the manufacturer too, to kind of assess how accurate we could get some of the elevation data and then the change over time on that. So, but what we did is we would set the missions within FlytBase and make sure that it was certain parameters to get the right data that we need. And I would say that mostly we, specifically us, are not necessarily looking for that data. And I would say it probably isn't as much. It's important to capture the data initially, and then once you get like down the road a lot more, that's when they're going to really start to address that. And I would say, yeah, the information has been captured, but I don't think we're not necessarily the ones that are like looking at all of that information all the time, because whoever has to rebuild and then consider, the different strategies to, put it back properly or make adjustments where there's, risk or they need to rebuild up something somewhere. Like, for instance, you saw that bridge and all the earth that moved, they're obviously going to have to deal with that a lot and figure out what they need to do to get that back to a safe environment. So those guys are actually taking a lot of that information and then doing it internally. And that's kind of where we wanted to be, is we wanted to be able to take all the information that we gathered and then be able to hand that information back out to people. So it really like expedites the process for everybody. So.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for the question. If you have any follow-up questions, Mitchell, feel free to put them in the chat box. Uh, we have another question from Nicholas. What kind of data have you found most useful for Asheville PD? Is it video recordings, or digital twins? Is there something else that really helped? I paraphrased the last
They,
one.
yeah, no, they absolutely love just straight up live feed, being able to share, be able to get the information to people at the very moment that there's a 911 call. So it's really cool. Kind of going in there and just anytime there's a call, it's within a minute or two, they're out on site with the drone, and just seeing that has been awesome from my perspective. But for them, they're able to get flight logs, get videos, or record whatever they need to, watch for things. If there's if they know about something that's going down, they can potentially help mitigate something. And so it's not necessarily like, I guess when you get a call and you're able to just hit go to location, I feel like that's maybe the best answer for you, Nick, is just the fact that they could go to directly to the location. They don't have to try to find it on the map. They enter it in, it goes right to the spot, and they have immediate video recording. Yeah, that's awesome. There's been there's been, I'll be as vague as possible because I think it's public, but there's been situations where somebody cannot get caught, or the police couldn't get there on site fast enough, and they were able to find the person with the drone because they knew exactly what location and were there within a really fast amount of time. So it's that's important to them, and that recording, and be able to provide that as evidence or history of what happened. I think that's all the other stuff. All the cleanup stuff is awesome, and it's really, but I think a lot of the times they get asked to provide information or to help with information, so they gather a lot of digital twins or gather a lot of video recording or just flyovers and stuff. They do that, but I think for them, the thing that makes them the most passionate is just be able to respond anywhere in the in the city at any time. So.
Awesome. Thank you for that. So we have a third question from Jia Wei, and I apologize if I have pronounced the name incorrectly. But the question goes, what would be the biggest pain point you would say a dock system helps to alleviate? So I think this is a more vague question beyond the scope of Asheville PD.
Man, if this is maybe way out of left field, but I would say if you personnel sharing of information, experienced labor. One of the difficulties we run into a lot with cities and with organizations that are either larger or have a lot of roles that they or hats they wear, by having the docs to be able to go out and gather information and get it back on a really fast timeline. It's you're not wasting driving out there. You're able to share information with the with other organizations like the fire department and city, if there's an inspection, something that they need, or they're asking for stuff. So that we've reduced the amount of personnel needed on site in a lot of different situations. And I think as going forward, it might not even be the most important thing for Asheville to answer your question, but going forward, if you're asking that question, I feel like that's where this goes technology wise, is reducing the workload and the experience needed. Because if I have somebody who can go in and do all the different inspections for the city, but it can be done by drone from somewhere remotely, and that information gets shared with the expert who still sits at his location and is able to analyze things, I think by speeding up that process, not having as many people out in the field, not requiring as many trained people to go and look at things when the trained people can see them from remote location. I think that's like where the idea of a lot of this goes, is help mitigate some of the time and cost and expense and required labor that it takes to run a whole city, or to run a DFR program, or to run a damage cleanup. So I think that's really where the docs come in, and they take that role over in a lot of ways.
Right, and I think that covers the use cases and the pain points that the doc helps solve for pretty well. We have another question from Peter, and I think this is a fresh question in terms of the commercial aspect. So the question goes, if you are thinking about placing a dock in a town or a city, can it be used for different functions and entities as a way to share the cost?
Um, yes. We, give me a shout on that one later, and we can talk a lot more about it. I can probably discourse on this for a while and bore everybody, but um, yeah, it's one of my favorite potential options, and I feel like there's a long way to go with that, with the future. I think that's a really important and huge way that this gets all done and implemented across the board. So to answer your question vaguely, yes, but I would say it's essentially what we want to be able to accomplish in Asheville, and we're doing it. And I think it's been really cool to kind of see how we can help. So, for instance, to kind of go along those lines without getting too deep into it and too long, there are contractors working these areas, and they need help with getting information sometimes as well too. And so if we can help offset costs of these docks to provide to the city by working with different contractors who are rebuilding, for instance, there's whoever got the contract to, I'm not really naming them on purpose, but the company that got the contract to clean up the entire thing is asking us for information and want some of the, so I mean, if they're willing to pay, or if anybody else in the area is willing to pay for the information to aid in the rebuild process, or in something else going forward, yeah, there's 100% an option to receive or bill for things that you can do during the rebuild process that help offset costs. And that's, again, like, if there was anything I think that a lot of this, almost all of this, really has to do with, is what we were really able to do is offset costs for Asheville Police Department in ways that nobody else was really suggesting and nobody else was willing to do. And because of that, here we are, and it's been a really great experience. So that question, you're on the right track in my mind, and happy to discuss anything with anybody about that. So
I know Rhys and we've discussed this quite a lot for a really long time in detail. So I know, Rhys, you have quite a lot of ideas around that, and I think that can be parked for another day.
yeah,
Jiawei has a follow up, and then we can wrap up with what else. So I'll probably set that context before I ask the question. Is what's next, Rhys, for you? And maybe you can take this question up and answer that so that we can wrap this up in the next 4 to 5 minutes. Is
yeah,
because Jiawei says it seems like reducing the workload and experiences. So you answered his question around particularly what are the biggest pain points that the doc is helping solve. The follow up is, seems like reducing the workload and experience needed is definitely important. I'm curious about what new issues and challenges have surfaced due to the deployment of the doc. And I think that really helps align with, what are these challenges that have now come up, and how do we solve them and go to the next stage, and what do you have in mind for the future?
yeah. I mean, we are taking this, far and wide, I guess, is a simple way to say, hey, we're going to grow with this as much as possible and keep pushing. I think for us, or for me, is we need to make sure that we there's a lot of stuff it's really hard to explain, and until you do it, and there's just, you might install a dock and it doesn't work for some weird reason, and sometimes why. So, and I would say every single one of them we've been able to work through and figure it out, but there's times where you do everything the exact same way, and then there still is something that will come into place where that doesn't necessarily work. So, like, but the more, and I'm not talking in any way bad about docks, I'm saying that, like, as you go through and you start to really be somebody who actually does this, there's a lot of struggles that you deal with that are kind of not known or not really talked about a lot of times, or maybe nobody's really experienced, especially when you're setting up a larger network or something like this. So for us, standardizing our approach, I would say, if we standardize exactly how all these things are done, and like, okay, well, we're going to work on taking a disaster like this and then saying, okay, here's the different phases that we have that we need to implement, here's what we experienced and how we need to make changes. So we're going to do a lot of internal stuff to kind of increase our ability to react, and we would like to be a company that is always in this type of an environment and able to provide our services and stuff. So by us kind of doing what we did here and some of the other stuff that we're doing right now that we haven't talked about, I think it's really going to help us just formulate or finalize what we're trying to do with that. So the other thing I'd say is just by doing that, we want to be able to act earlier, respond immediately, and it takes some things that I would say it takes, being willing to have yourself in a position to act, and that's sometimes difficult to do. If you just, like having inventory of docs would be probably somebody is, going to say that that's ridiculous and you shouldn't have that. But I mean, if you are in the situation and you need docs, I mean, you might have to wait a long time to get docs in order to then go act. And how would you be able to say that you could do this with a hurricane or something that happens when you don't even have the ability to, have that inventory to go react like that? So there's a lot of stuff like that I think we're working towards making sure that we're in line with that. And then I think the question that was asked is just one of the biggest things we're moving towards is just other options as things move forward. So, the Asheville is not, I don't think that they'll let me take those docks, and move them anywhere else, or as much as it's a temporary situation, or it was to cover this environment that happened. They're not going to want to get rid of these, and it's been super helpful for them. So, coming up with a strategy of not only like the disaster response, but making sure that we have the aftermath and how that goes and how we can really help and integrate them and train them and stuff is a big deal. So, once you stick these in these locations, there's partners now that we want to work with us. We're moving towards a lot of the different commercial relationships that we built with these people are moving forward just because they want to see what they can do with it as well, and be helpful on their side as well too. So I think, we're a company, we're going to go and we're going to do our best to find ways to position ourselves and become, bigger, make money, and be as helpful as we possibly can and be experts in this industry. So we're really excited about it. But I think, the guy asked the question about the working with people to reduce costs is probably one of the biggest things that we're working towards. Is just, this is a big cost, and you might not think it is, and there's cities that have plenty of money, and there's a lot of different opinions and thoughts on all of that, but it is a decently large cost, especially for somebody like Asheville, or somebody who's not, even if it was a major city, depending on the scale and size of what happens or what they're trying to do, it is a high cost. So us finding ways to get that figured out is going to be most important, and help to either reduce or share burden, or provide creative options to make it work for people. So
Thank you so much for all the insights, Rhys. This was really helpful. I have spoken to you multiple times, but this was still, every time I speak to you, I learn something new about how docs are to be deployed, and what the different advantages of doing that, what are the challenges, what are the pain points, and what the future looks like. So I think this was really helpful. We'll be sharing the recording of this over YouTube, and for whoever is interested, you can please reach out to us. I've shared our email IDs in the chat box. Peter's asking for your website, Rhys. So if you have one, you can enter into the chat box, or maybe an email or whatever that
yeah,
you feel comfortable sharing. And folks over the thank you so much everyone for joining in. I think please stay in touch, and this is a growing community of folks interested in deploying docs for interesting use cases. So FlytBase has been pioneering this for the last 4 years, and now we're finally working with great folks such as Ovrwatch to deploy docs for use cases that really matter. Thank you for everyone for joining in, especially Rhys for taking the time out.
yeah,
Um,
it's been a pleasure.
have,
Thanks for working with us. You guys, like, just as in general, you guys have been really awesome to work with, and for everybody looking at FlytBase too, like these guys have been perfect for. I think they all stay up later than they should, work longer than they should, and they really try to make sure that you get what you need for what you're working with and stuff. So you guys have been extremely helpful, and they all have talked about how much they appreciate that, and what is solution that we've given them, and all of that is done with FlytBase. So we've been super appreciative of that, and obviously thanks for letting me get on here and talk about it. So
Thank you so much, Rhys. Have a great day, guys. And do tune in to all our other webinars. So thank you so much. We'll close it for now.
okay,
Good
cool.
day. Good
Thanks.
night.
See ya.
Bye.